Welcome everybody to a new episode of New Waylie. Sorry, it's definitely been a while. I've been quite busy with a lot of things, personal and professional. But we're back here for a new episode, continuing the development of this city. And of course, let's just get right into it.
Hey everyone.
Future editor me here. Just want to say real quick that at the very end, I'll be giving a preview of what's coming up in the next video. So make sure you check those out. Alright, let's continue. So this video is going to be focusing on our floating park complex. We're really just going to be seeing the construction and detailing of one, because most of the other ones are just going to be copies of that. But first, I wanted to start with something I talked about in the last episode, which was this monorail station area. So right now it's just a stop, but I need to put some platforms here and make it a proper station. Now, that's the one I'm going to use, that's network that I just selected, but of course I'm not going to do it in there. So I copied the track out, moved it to a nice empty area in the map, and I just started drawing. The platform here and try to match it as best as I can with the track, but not trying too hard because I'll be adjusting it later anyway. A small hassle with this is that you see that this is another asymmetrical network, which means I have to draw it in the correct direction to make sure that the line that's in it is in the right place, which would be of course next to the track, since I figured that's the safety line. But this wasn't the easiest thing to line up, so I spent a good amount of time trying to work out exactly where to place the nodes and how to curve the curves. And it was especially troublesome because I see here I need to make sure that the connections are exactly 180, because this network does not have nodes. What I mean by that is that it doesn't have a node texture. It probably even has the option on to clip segment ends. And that's why you see that if it's even slightly off, you will see a gap between the two segments, so it's really adds to the hassle of trying to build this correctly. But once I was done, I could just copy this out, and then I can use the scaling tools and move it, which is just hitting plus or minus. And so I figured it would be really easy, but no, because of what I said earlier about this being an asymmetrical network, and I can't just flip it around. So I did this little thing here where I just drew another random network on top of it just to give me the path, and then I drew the platform network again over it, and this time in the right direction so that the lines face in the right way. But now that means we have to do this whole process all over again of lining up the nodes and the segments really carefully so that it's adjacent and or even touching the track. Then it was time to drag it into place here and just really carefully make sure that it aligns with the track, and both in height but also, you know, its horizontal placement. And wait, what's going on here? There's a gap. There's a gap there. And then I check the other side after I fix it, and there's still a gap, or the track is going through the platform. Is it my rotation is off? And I copied the track over, see what's going on. I don't think it's going to be visible from the shots here, but turns out the track wasn't level. So I had to fix that, of course. I don't remember exactly what I did. I don't know if I just leveled out the track. I guess it should have been optimal, so I hope I did, because realigning all those nodes to the track probably would have been harder. But anyway, once that was done, I took it out again. But this time I brought it upwards because it was time to put all the props on it. And bringing it up was really the only option, because otherwise I'd have to realign everything again, right? So we're gonna have to be working at extreme height, but at least we don't have to deal with aligning everything. And then I'll just have to highlight everything here, the props and the platforms that I raised up, and then just bring it back down. So I started with a bunch of benches, of course. Some of them I had already placed here, but you know, it's the same basic idea. I put 3 down and slightly angled the ones on the side so that it follows the curve, then just repeated that, copy and pasted a few times around. And I did make a good use of the move it tool that allows you to adjust the spacing between the objects, so you'll see that a few times a little bit later. But yeah, this is just basically arranging those benches. I put some signs down, lights, and some big ads behind the benches. Then we just finish up with some plants, a couple bushes and some potted plants like that, and then it's time to just highlight everything. So the way I decided to do it was click one prop and use the picker and move it to make sure I only select everything of that prop. And since I know pretty well what I've used in my city, I can select that reliably. And then I just switched to another prop and use the picker again to select that. And once I was sure that I had everything selected, bring it all back down. which is what you see here. And there it is, all nicely done. So time for a little cinematic here where we take a ride in the monorail right below the new Waylie City sign and pull up to the station. Time for some parks. So to build this park surface, we're going to be using ploppable surfaces. So this is a surface that actually has two sides to it, which is really good. And honestly, I kind of forgot that it does. So I really should be using it more. I think I stopped using it because, you know, I always have to put something on top of it anyway, because the grass texture on it just really isn't that great. But it's definitely an easier thing to work with when I want to put a bottom to things. So that's what I'm using here, and just kind of coming up with some weird shape. Just completely improvised. I don't even know what I'm doing. But when I decided to put that angled side, that's when I start liking where this is going. You can see that there's already some kind of surface there, a white one between the grass stuff and the tram. So that's going to be the tram stop area. But I said in my last video that I believe that was going to be the last time that I showed the build chronologically, because I want to start showing mini projects all together, you know, instead of showing how sometimes I jump around way too much between different areas. So the last video kind of was meant to showcase that a little bit, because I did talk about it, and then I said how I just usually jump around a lot. But now, as long as I have enough footage for it, I'm definitely going to keep the mini projects together. So right now we're watching just the construction of the surface of these parks, which you saw there. And so I'll be showing the tram stop a little bit later. Now that the actual surface, and meaning like the actual, ploppable surface is done, I was working on some sort of edge for it. And I didn't connect these, as you see, because connecting networks, of course, make that rounded edge. And I wanted these to be completely sharp 90-degree angles and stuff. So that's why I didn't. So that means I'm going to have to be adjusting their ends a little bit. And that's going to be difficult if the nodes are overlapping like this. So the step over feature in Move It was critical for this, which I'm going to show right here. I assigned it to the tilde key, which I recommend because I originally had it on a combination. And with my low FPS, when things didn't work, I didn't know what was going on. But you see how it works where my mouse is over two things, so it goes to the next one. But keep doing it and everything unselects, because it doesn't actually cycle through them, which I guess is good, so you know when you're done. So once again, I'm showing here when my mouse is actually over two things, then it works. But then I bring the mouse like to the center of the node here, the top one, and then it doesn't work. It's just deselects because there's nothing else under it. But you otherwise don't get any other indication from the UI. So here it was still a little troublesome because whichever gets selected, I still don't know which one is selected. So I wish there would be some sort of extra thing to the selection, like maybe it would also select the segment it's connected to, and that would be a little easier, hopefully, or at least different colors. I think colors would be better, because that way if I have something completely overlapped, like even the segment, then maybe there would be a different color for higher things, right? So I would hope, like, you know, the redder the color, the higher it is, or something like that. So I think that would be great to make this a little easier for weird people like me who do this kind of detailing where things are way too overlapped. And that's the big reason also why, it's important for us to build things like this away from the intended area and just on the ground or whatever, so that's easier to build, easier to work with, and we're not dealing with nodes and selections overlapping stuff that we've already built before. So I sped up the video now here since it's pretty much the same thing, but I do want to point out real quick that you might notice some of these rotations I'm doing is because I'm using the railway border. That's the network I'm using here as the edge, and it is asymmetrical. That's kind of the point that you use it, because it has one side has a lower level, and we kind of use that as a surface where you would lay down whatever surface you're working on. You know, it was supposed to sit on top of that. So sometimes when you're copying and pasting and all that, things get flipped around, the thing kind of resets somehow, so I had to spin those things around. So once that was done, it was time to drag that all into position right where it's meant to be. And I aligned it with the platforms of the tram. Like I said, I'll show that a little bit later. but that's going to be the sort of front edge of the park. After that, we started looking at what we're going to use for a path, because we're always going to be using an invisible path anyway, so we don't really need an actual path network to make it. So I was looking at some of these like median and curves and things like that, and ended up with this one right here. Yeah, it's some sort of, is this the cable network? I don't think so. It might be, can't really see which one it is, but it's more like a structural network, I think. And you can see I have like 2 or 3, and I like the look of that, and I figured that's the one I'm going to use. But I did want something a little more interesting for the intersection, so I looked at what kind of round options I had here, and I pretty much settled for just more of these poppable surfaces, although these I'm pretty sure are one-sided, so they don't have a bottom to them or anything. And I was just trying to find a good shape, good size, and of course even what kind of texture I want to go for. So I was wondering, like, do I just want to round out the little angles here that we have where they connect, or do I want something larger than that? So I was just experimenting here and see what worked. Once I settled on that brick one, I got this curve network because I figured an edge to it would also look nice. So it was a little difficult working with such a small scale, but it eventually worked out by making a cross, as you usually pretty much should do, like when you make roundabouts, and that we get a really round one. And then I removed one of the lines of that cross so that we had more of this I don't know, just like 2 semicircles together, and I really liked how that looked. So that was my path right there. Just very simple, right? We just want we want an entrance, we want, and then, you know, one path going to the left, one to the right. So, and that was pretty much it. So with this, I considered pretty much the surface done. Like, most of it is done, and again, it was just a matter of bringing it over to where it needs to be. Then it was just copy that whole thing, and so that we would have 3 on each side, although I did offset them a little bit. Oh yeah, there's actually 4 on the left side. Wow. I still need to detail those. So here's a look of what we've done right now. So all the same surface, all the same kind of park layout, and we're just going to be detailing them at least in 2 different ways. We want the very top one here to be kind of at the same level as the houses that we built right here. That way we kind of have a nice sort of lookout for these people, you know, something more scenic, even though a lot of their surroundings and what's under this level, it looks a little bit more complex or messy or whatever you want to call it, but we want that top level to be looking kind of nice. So with that done, let's start looking at the small, very related part of this, which was the tram stops that's going to be at every one of these layered parks. And I didn't actually show how I put these together, but it's pretty obvious that there's just 3 of these blocks. You'll see pretty soon that they're actually offset anyway, so it's pretty obvious where they are. But 3 of these platform blocks, and I just placed 2 bus stops right next to each other on top of them, and that would make the stop. And I did decide to offset them because, first of all, the track is sloped, and I decided I wanted to keep it that way. And it might be a little weird, but that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to just kind of challenge myself and see if we could have this sort of stepped platform with the layered track. So relatively, this was a pretty quick thing. It's just a matter of placing these correctly because of the slope, as I said. So I wanted to make sure that I did offset these to follow the slope, but at the same time, the idea was that it's only the middle segment that's really going to be where you board and disembark from the tram. But right behind us, as you might see there, or like right in the middle of the screen or just below it, this is where we have our holographic paths from the parking lots. So we need a way for people who are getting off their hover cars and walking on these paths, which right now looks like just this dull glass because Prop Painter keeps resetting on every load. But yeah, I just have to have a little ramp from there to the platform. That makes them pretty much done, and the only thing I'll be doing now is just adjusting their heights, because since I do have them overlapping just to make sure there's no gaps between them, there is Z fighting, you know, where the topmost textures are fighting for who's going to be visible. So you need to offset them just a tiny bit, hopefully by such a small amount that no one will notice, but the game knows it's different and knows who's on top. And now it's time to start what for me was the highlight of this area, and that is an energy path. Sometimes I think of it as a holographic path. I think that was the original idea, but because of how solid looking it is, and very different from the semi-transparency that a lot of the other holographic elements in my city are going to have, I figured this really should be considered more of an energy road, kind of like what the Covenant use in Halo, you know, where it almost looks like it's energy but somehow becomes solid. I don't know, or it just is solid. And I did want this to have some texture, even though I already planned on using decals and messing with the transparency. So that's why I'm using here what I'm pretty sure it is one of those road skins networks. They're actually meant for any time when you use ploppable surfaces or something, because those have a very flat kind of color and they don't have that worn down look that your normal roads do. So you can overlay that on top of it. If not, also just other kinds of detailing projects, I guess, where you want the texture of a road and for some reason don't have it. Now, I was looking around a good bit trying to think what I could use to fake this energy, and I found this gravel pack that I've already used before, and I figured that their sparkliness and trying to mess with the transparency so that it kind of blends with the road texture might be a pretty good fit here, you know, because again, I was looking for something that would look different from a normal holographic stuff. This was going to be a bit of a project, something I'd spent some time on. And this right now that we have here is pretty much already there. Kind of looks a little bad because I was experimenting with whether or not I should mix up the colors, like going with green and blue. I'm not sure how much I show, but I do try it for a little bit, try to see if I can make it work so that it looks a little, I don't want to say unstable, but just a little bit inconsistent. Like maybe there's a flow of energy, and like as the waves of energy go by, like those different colors or something, like it alternates between blue and green or something like that. That was enough of a good start, which is why I'm starting here to just work on how to make it look projected. And I was considering first something projected from the top, and I do believe I keep one. It's probably not going to be obvious from this video. I don't think I even show it, but the most important thing was showing it the projection at the ends of the paths. So I looked at different kinds of little like floodlights or always on lights or whatever, and see what could work. Once I saw that we managed something pretty decent, I went back to messing with the decals here, and I even tried adding some white here, just, oh yeah, maybe just to try to get a little bit of a duller color and not so saturated. But as you see here, I gradually replaced more and more of it anyway, and I think I ended up taking out most or all of it. The real issue was just trying to tile as many of these as I could in a good way, because the thing is, I wanted to avoid procedural objects. I didn't want to really add more of those here if I didn't have to. So I couldn't use procedural objects to expand the range of the decal, you know, like how much of a slope they can handle. So that's why they have a very narrow slope that they can handle. I thought that was okay because it just allows me to really precisely control where we have it a little bit darker, a little bit clearer. In retrospect, a lot of it probably would have been better, would look neater if I just kept it consistent by expanding that range that the decal can affect. But whatever, this turned out pretty well, and so really not that much work for the kind of look that I was hoping for. It worked out okay. But then I remembered to use these lights that I had already used for projecting the holographic paths in the parking area. And yeah, because we still have a path here that's about the same kind of color, we're still working with green here, it fits. It works fine. So there we go. I decided to put those in there, 3 of them, and they also have, again, they have that cone, which is what's really awesome. So it really, really pushes that idea that this stuff is being projected. And that cone is actually fairly real, as you can kind of see there. It really is illuminating a lot of that path. So all I had to do was try to aim them as best as I could to illuminate that path as best as possible at both night and day. And now it's time to start adding some details to the park, and the first thing is going to be that little round thing we see in the back there. We're going to add another one of those, which is part of that plasma pillar set by Langshao. And here I'm going to be using it in 2 ways. One right here in the bottom as kind of like a hovering thing, right? So it's going to be the repulsor that holds this hover park up. But I'm not sure when it's going to be visible. We're also going to have one on top, and that's actually, the idea is it's actually going to be like an elevator thing. So again, actually kind of like Halo, I guess. So something that you can step on and it'll elevate you onto the next level. Then you saw me place a few different kinds of benches and stuff, just trying to think about what else could fit here. And I decided to just kind of make my own, or at least modify one. I'm not exactly exactly sure what I picked up here. I can see that the ones I'm using as benches really are benches, but I'm not sure what I'm using for the table, because it definitely looks like they're a set, right? Like perfectly the same texture and everything. But I made my little set here, checked against the others to make sure that the scale was about right, and then yeah, just copied the set here a few times so I can start placing it around the park. And speaking of things we've copied, here's another one of the Tiny Turtles area. You can see already the two computers there. I just placed down that bench and we have our distinctive flooring style. Not much else to do there at the moment. So it's time to just go around and start putting down a whole bunch of different bushes and stuff. So we have some of these cluster bushes, I think probably 2 different sizes. And I don't think I redo individual bushes. I managed to fit these kind of clusters throughout these little areas here, just trying to fill in the space between the walkways and the edges of the park. So the idea is that, you know, we're not going to be walking on the grassy areas, so you walk on the path, you walk to the bench or the Tiny Turtles or whatever. They're just there as a visual attraction, really. Beautification. But it's not going to be like that everywhere. We're now adding this decal, which is the stone path. So since this side is a bit larger, I figured, yeah, we do want people to walk a little bit into those areas, so that way they can look more closely at the bushes, at the flowers, especially since I'm planning on adding a little bit more in bushes, so we'll be seeing that pretty soon. But you can see right now the corner there on the bottom right, which is the one that I did want completely filled up, and I particularly thought that might be a nice view from the tram. We are a bit zoomed out here because I'm always at weird camera angles because I'm so high up, and I'm just trying to find whatever camera angle lets me select. Well, this is not a selecting angle. If you want to select stuff, you need to be looking down a lot more vertically. This is an angle that was just allowing me to get a good look, you know, in between the layers here. But even just like dragging something that I've already selected would move it, with the mouse in particular, would probably be pretty difficult from that kind of view because the mouse feels way too sensitive, and it's just because the camera's target is actually down there somewhere at terrain level. So I guess that means that, yeah, because it's actually so far away, small camera movements would actually be, small mouse movements would actually be a pretty big deal. So they feel pretty exaggerated. Here I could do it with the mouse just fine because I'm staring down vertically, but in other places, yeah, it's just better to do with keyboard and mouse. That's not always optimal though, because you actually have higher precision with the mouse, but here I'm not that zoomed in. I'm not actually working with things that are too small in scale, so moving with the keyboard and mouse is just fine. Although what we're seeing on screen right now is mouse movements, because, you know, it feels nicer, right? It's always gonna be more direct and intuitive to just use the mouse, so I definitely use the mouse when I can, but if the camera position is gonna be a big issue for me, then whatever, just gotta use the keyboard. So we're finishing up our detailing here, just adding these random little bushes here, trying to find some nice little arrangement for them. And we also put a lot of grass, which I think you saw. I really wanted the lion to look nested in there with a lot of grass, and really be a point of interest between the main path and the stone path on the left. So after popping down a few benches, it's the last thing I usually do is put down the lights. And that is pretty much it. So that is the finished park, or at least one of them. Actually, just one of them. Since we've seen the process of building one park, and it was the more complex one actually, I'm just going to include a screenshot of the second one that I detailed, and that will come after a final look at the one that we've seen in this video. So enjoy before I wrap up and cover what's coming up next time. Next time, a bus tunnels 60 stories high, backyards get some green, I trap a road inside a park, and we build the thing. Yes, everybody, allow me to say that I'm very excited for the next couple of videos because there are some big projects that we'll be seeing there. And so I can't wait to show you what we're going to be doing with that park and that mysterious thing that I'm not going to explain right now. And then the following video after that is going to be something that took me 2 months to do. And so for the foreseeable future, every next video is going to have a pretty unique and really cool project. So I hope you guys stick around and I hope you like it. Make sure to hit that like button if you want other people to see this video. Hit subscribe if you want to see more videos. Hit the bell if you want to see when I post next videos. And leave a comment if you want me to see what you have to say. So, wherever you may be, good morning, good afternoon, and good